Welcome in the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thank you for joining us on your favorite podcast app or on Dash Radio. Download the Dash Radio app, search for Nothing But Net. You'll find us every day from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. You can also find 5reasonsports.com for all the latest Heat stories from Brady Hawk, all the latest on the Dolphins, the Marlins from David Fernandez, and so many of our other writers. We do not have a paywall. You get everything there for free. We even added a section called 5R Bets, so look for some gambling stories there as well. Also, our merchandise is there. Bam VP shirt, the Jimmy Canasta shirt, Tyler Hero's drip shirt. We've got all of those, including Bucket Brothers. So make sure you check that out. We may be running a Christmas promotion. We will let you know on that. And my new show on OnSideRadio.com every day at 10 a.m. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. One of those is this really, really cool daily fantasy product called prizepicks.com. You can check them out using the code 5. This is what you want to do if your fantasy team in football is shot. But also, this is what you're going to want to do in the NBA. They are simplifying the NBA rules. We will be rolling out some content related to this on 5 on the Floor. We're going to teach you how to play. And before every game, we're going to tell you what to play. Okay, so they're going to be doing single stat stuff. So, for instance, if you think Jimmy Butler is going to score more than 23 against Toronto, you play him as an over and pair him with another player on another team and then try to win that way. So we will be explaining it in more detail, but sign up now. prizepicks.com. The code is 5. This is where you want to go for daily fantasy. And this is where you want to go for our new episode, which comes up next.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I've got Greg Sylvander. I've got Alex Toledo. I also think this is the time to mention to you that we'll be adding some more contributors to 5 on the Floor. So look for some of those over the next week. We have a deep bench, and we're going to use them. As Erik Spoelstra always says, we have enough. Now, we'll see if they have enough for the preseason, because we come to you before the first preseason game. This one comes up against the Pelicans, who also happen to be the team that the Heat will be playing on Christmas in a real game, and then Toronto, and then the season starts. So I will start with you here, Greg. We don't know what's going to happen with the James Harden situation. Now, I think we have more of an idea than a lot of the other outlets, but nobody knows for sure. And as of right now, it's on hold. It's waiting. There's a little bit game of chicken, but there's a lot of smoke that the Heat are very much in play here, and we have an idea of how far they might go to get him. It's quite a tease. But I'll put this to you, Greg. A lot of these young players that are going to get a lot of minutes in these 2 preseason games, maybe not as many minutes because you got to get the vets ready too in a very compressed period of time. But the Precious Achiuwas, the KZ Okpalas, the Tyler Heroes, the Kendrick Nunns could end up being packaged somewhere else. Does that change the way that you view this preseason?
Not really. I think it's a little premature to, keep it connected to a transaction that may never, come to be. But there is a couple elements to it that are interesting, because I think you're onto something in that a lot of the veterans are going to sit. I wouldn't expect to see Jimmy, Bam, Goran, Iggy. They may even sit Duncan Robinson. I think it's going to be a lot of the young players. Spoelstra led with the chin in an interview recently when he said something about kind of giving these guys some more run, the young guys in particular. And so there's a couple things that we get from that, right? One, we get to see some of these young pieces and how they've either further developed or what they are, whether it's Precious, who we've never really seen in a Heat uniform, or seeing what KZ Okpala has morphed into over the offseason. So there's some of that to look out for. But then there's also this other part of it where, depending on how good a guy looks, does he increase his trade value? And there's some of that we can look for also. So there are some layers to it as you get into the preseason that are beyond the basketball court. Although I will say that there's a part of me that is just kind of looking forward to seeing Heat basketball again.
Alex, do you agree with Greg? Because actually I was going the other direction, Greg. I think you may see more of the veterans in these 2 games simply because there aren't that many preseason games. There used to be 8, and now there are 2. So don't you want to get a longer look at, some of the veteran guys playing with Avery Bradley or playing with Mo Harkless than maybe you would if you had a longer preseason?
I don't know, man. I think I sided with Leif on this one because like I think we'll see them for 15, 20 minutes. I think you kind of know what you're getting with all of these guys. Like I don't really know. Like to me, Avery Bradley, Mo Harkless, Jimmy, Goran. Like I know all of these guys are giving me Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard. I'm not really like we know what we need, what we know about them. And even with Harkless and Bradley, who we haven't seen Heat uniforms, like we know generally because of their careers what they can and can't do, and what they were added for, and it's mostly defense. And so yeah, I want to see them, but I do think that we're going to end up seeing 15, 20 minutes of some veterans playing, and then the rest of it is just kind of the young guys getting reps. And I think for the same reason Leif said, it'll probably be good to see get a gauge on how everybody's looking and how Precious and KZ are looking if they get to play. I think Heat fans are going to be really excited for that, just like they always get for, whenever these guys get mentioned. But specifically because of the trade value, like I think that's something that can't be ignored. Like we kind of talked about it leading up to the show. And like that's really kind of the headline that I think the Heat don't really want to talk about right now, just because this is all kind of going to be a waiting game for months. But preseason, you got all these young guys playing. I don't think you can ignore the narrative building.
Who is the preseason most important for, Greg? One player. Give me one player.
Wow. One guy, I would probably go with KZ Okpala. I think like he has the opportunity here to find himself a role that maybe, like even if Precious comes out and looks awesome and is ready to roll, like there's still guys that are going to be playing in front of him. I think at this point, I mean, obviously the goal is that one day he could be next to Bam, but that's unrealistic from day one. Whereas if KZ takes a leap here, you're really plugging in a player that can, like a wing that can contribute in ways when Iguodala can't go for a full season. So that's the guy that I'm most interested to see. But there's also this other thing, and I know we're kind of heading in lots of different directions, but seeing Kendrick Nunn get back on track, that would also be a good thing. And he's a guy I think will get a considerable amount of time in this preseason.
He's number one for me, actually. I don't know that we're going to see enough of KZ Okpala or Precious Achiuwa in sample size in these two games, even though they're both going to get minutes to make any kind of definitive determination. But we did see last year Kendrick Nunn drop 40 in a preseason game, and we saw the way that built into the season and sort of his expectation level going up and up and up and up. And then obviously him winning rookie of the month for, was it the first 3 or 4 months of the season, finishing second in rookie of the year voting. But his value is depressed. There's no question about it, whether, the Heat are pumping him up, but possibly as a trade asset, but also as a guy who could put himself very much back in the Heat's plans, depending on where they go. What do you want to see from Kendrick in these two games? Because I think I wouldn't be surprised if Kendrick Nunn leaves the Heat in minutes in these two games.
Yeah, so I was actually gonna say the same thing, that Kendrick was gonna be my guy to look at, because I think that's kind of the biggest question about the rotation going into the season. So, I mean, if you just kind of map out the rotation, I'm not really sure exactly where Kendrick Nunn fits in. I'm not saying he won't be in the rotation or he shouldn't be, because I do think he should be. I think he's a rotation player for sure in the NBA. And regardless of the trade value conversation, because I don't really want to just kind of make that the whole thing with Kendrick Nunn. Like, the guy is a good player. He finished all rookie first team. Like I said before, we can't ignore the stuff of Kendrick Nunn because we know he'd probably be the most likely to be dealt in a trade. But, at the end of the day, Kendrick Nunn needs to go out and show out, I think, in this preseason to kind of get himself back into the rotation. I think I don't know if he's going to be starting. I think that kind of seems unlikely at this point. And maybe Spo surprises us like he always does, because, I definitely don't know what I'm talking about. And like, Kendrick Nunn could be right back in the starting lineup before we know it. And it could kind of start tomorrow, right? Like, would you be surprised if he just go back to dropping 17 points a game tomorrow?
No, I think he's capable of it. I mean, I think it's, I think we're actually talking about it at the end of 2 days because you've got both preseason games, but I wouldn't be stunned at all if he's getting heavy minutes. And I think, Greg, you're onto something that with some of the veteran guys, particularly if you look at Bradley, for instance, okay, who we've projected as a possible starter. I think there's curiosity to see how he fits with certain Heat players, but there's not really curiosity about Avery Bradley's skill set. I mean, that's been pretty well cemented over the past, 8 years. So I don't think that it's about that so much, but I guess how much does it matter that we see Harkless and Bradley in different combinations with Heat players? Because not only do you typically have the 8 preseason games over the years, but you've also had, what was it? Was it called the red and black event, which is
the scrimmage
where Spoelstra is basically, they split the team up into 2 parts and they're splitting up with all these different combinations. And most people don't take it that seriously, but sometimes it's interesting because you see players play together that haven't. They don't have any of that this year. Basically just throwing these guys through two preseason games and putting them back on the court. Is there, with Bradley and Harkless in particular, is there anybody that you want to see them paired with to see how it looks?
Yeah, that's it right there. It's not really about seeing Bradley or Harkless individually. There's little things like seeing Harkless maybe attempt more threes and how he shoots them and things like that. So there is finer points to each of their individual games that are noteworthy to watch, but you guys hit on it. It's the combinations. It's how does Bradley and Hero look next to each other? How does Harkless, fit in a lineup in the Jay Crowder role and look next to a guy like Bam Adebayo and with Duncan Robinson on the other side? Like those are the things that you want to see from a depth perspective. Can Kelly Olynyk and Mo Harkless play next to each other? And what does that do? Or, so there's definitely a bunch of different combinations. And that's what Spoelstra has really harped on, the fact that the versatility and depth of this roster is such a strength, and particularly in this season, because like all the things you mentioned about not having as much preseason games, not having as much time to get prepared, not having the scrimmage that at least we don't have to drive all the way to FAU to see anymore these days. Like not having all of that means that truthfully, these first 10 regular season games are going to be as much a fact-finding process as the preseason usually is. So I think it could be a little slow out the gate, and fans should probably expect for the basketball to maybe be not as beautiful as normal. And you're learning about what works and what doesn't kind of on the fly during the season when the games count, just by virtue of the circumstances.
By the way, I think this kind of, speaks positively about the Heat and what they did over the offseason. Just kind of looking at it now with the short turnaround, very little preseason games. You kind of got a shortened season. Just adding guys and Harkless and Avery Bradley, who I think are kind of really clean system fits. And I know, like, I do agree with you guys with what you're talking about, seeing the combinations. I'm interested in seeing them too, but I am confident in the sense that I think they kind of have their own thing that they run, and everybody that's there already and was there last season is kind of, they know what they're doing with it. And I feel like those guys are going to fit in perfectly with what they do, whether it's on offense or defense. A lot of them, they don't require a lot on ball. And so I kind of think it really does speak positively about what the Heat did in the offseason, just kind of adding guys who they have a short turnaround for the season, but not only that, like they're going to have a short turnaround and, getting Bradley and Harkless up to speed.
We'll get back to our episode here in a second. Before we do, I want to tell you about another of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Knicks are no good in the NBA. You're familiar with that? The Knicks are no good. Well, Knicks are no good when you're shaving certain parts of your body either. So that's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team spent 18 months perfecting the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created. I never thought I would actually say that on a podcast. And just released the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0. Their 3rd generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to advanced skin-safe technology pioneered by Manscaped. When I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes, so you can take a longer shave. The waterproof technology allows you to groom in the shower. One of the coolest features is the LED light, which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming. And let's not forget about the charging stand. Show your mower off loud and proud, because this intelligently designed stand is a convenient charging dock powered by USB. If you're listening to me speak right now, I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Make sure you trim yourself. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code 5RSN at manscaped.com. And now this is where I end my career. Your balls will thank you. And now, back to the episode. All right, back on 5 on the floor again. Check out the code 5RSN for 15% off at manscaped.com. All right, one guy that we have not talked about much lately, and actually looking back, and I'm like, we have not done an episode about him. And this is one of the biggest questions coming into training camp, particularly with a shortened season, is Goran Dragic. And he spoke the other day, and Greg, I'm kind of stunned how ahead of schedule he is.
Yeah. I mean, they always said that when it popped, when the injury happened, that kind of the worst of it was behind him initially. And it was a pain thing. And usually you would have to, I guess, go in for surgery to have what happened to him naturally. So maybe like a little bit of that has helped him get further along. But I also think that truthfully, you can't replicate game speed, game intensity, kind of the pounding that you take over and over, several nights in a row and things like that. So I still think that there's something to be seen from Goran Dragic's perspective in terms of how ready he is, and they should take it slow. Like that. That's something I really think Heat fans need to embrace. It's something that I am constantly reminding myself that this is absolutely a marathon, not a race. And guys like Jimmy and Goran that just had extended runs where they were either spent by the end of it or injured by the end of it. I think that there's going to be a certain level of measure to all this, and Goran will be one of the guys that is measured most. But that's where guys like Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero and others may have the opportunity to step up. Gabe Vincent's season maybe, but it'll be really encouraging if Dragic looks anything like he did in the bubble, because he was a rejuvenated version of himself. And it would be awesome to see that for one more year as we head into 2021.
Alex, how much should he play in these two games?
Honestly, I don't think he should play much. Like, I would like to see him get out there and play a little bit just to kind of get his body going and warm up. But 15 minutes, maybe? Like, I don't think he needs to play much more than that.
Well, isn't part of it? Okay, so there's really two elements here, right, in terms of how much he plays. One is, where they are with him in practice and how comfortable with him, again, putting weight on it, whether he's back to 100%. And so one is health related. The other is simply glut of depth related.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, right. I mean, if he's going to play 20 minutes each in these two games, then you're not going to get the look at Nunn, right? You don't, if you do want to see how Bradley looks with some of these other players, it's more difficult. If you do want to give Tyler Hero an extended run to get him ready for this season, but also if Houston forgot, or Washington forgot, or one of these other teams, kind of what he looked like in the Eastern
we need
Conference
a 40
Finals.
pointer from Tyler this time.
Right.
Tyler drops 40. So, and then of course Duncan's going to get some of those backcourt minutes. And so, I mean, you have a lot of guards, right? So to me, if you give Goran 15 minutes in the first game and he looks good, do you even need to play him in the second game? You just, you give him the week off.
Honestly, like, I don't know. And this is completely intuitive on my, from me, just at a gut level. I don't think he's going to play in either game, really. Like, I have this feeling that they're going to be super conservative with Goran Dragic in particular. But this is the other part of the preseason that I think can't be discounted, is that the Heat are not electing to send their guys off to the G League, and they're not doing the Sioux Falls thing. So that is an indication to me that they plan on utilizing the guys that they keep, and that is going to be a bigger factor than usual. So there also is like a back end part of this fact-finding process when it comes to not only Gabe Vincent, but whether it's Max Strus or it's Paul Eboa. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. I'm really interested to see him. But you kind of got to get an idea of who exactly you're going to keep as your other two-way player, because they're going to be contributors at some point, just inevitably this season. It's just points in that direction.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little deeper, because we really haven't discussed that either. We've been so hard in focus lately. And let's throw Gabe Vincent in that mix, because we saw a little of him last year, but it was forced, right? I mean, there was the one game, on the trade deadline day, and he handed, what was it, against the Clippers? He ends up playing on national TV because they didn't have anybody else on the day that Winslow was traded. Of those guys you mentioned, Vincent and some of these other, not Bam or KZ, not Bam, not Precious, or I'm going to do this all year, but not Precious or KZ, because I want to have separate conversations about them before we close this. But of the others, of kind of the fringe guys, I would include Silva in that as well. Who are you most curious about, Alex?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know much about these guys, just like any other Heat fan, I kind of did a quick YouTube on these guys after the Heat picked them up. I'm definitely not an expert, but I think they're all kind of interesting in their own ways. To me, Max Struss is interesting just because that's somebody that obviously Leif or Greg, as you call him, put out there on Twitter that the Heat had interest in him months ago. And, that's the same thing that happened with Duncan Robinson. And when the Heat really focus in on a guy like that, that definitely piques my interest. So I guess I'm going to put him there.
Yeah, the Heat have loved him. I mean, before the draft last year, I was told by people, not only on the Heat side, but from DePaul's side, that there was Heat scouts like in the building so much that they thought it was inevitable he would end up in Miami at some point. So they've liked his game. He's feisty. So I think he kind of fits the mold from the way he approaches the game and the competitive kind of stuff too. But the other guy that I think is going to be a sleeper to watch is Breein Tyree. I think that he brings some really explosive offensive stuff. He's polished in certain ways that I think could help Miami. And, I'm hesitant to say they would keep two guards as two-way players. And I think Gabe Vincent's already locked into one of those spots, but Breein Tyree's probably the player of all these guys that I think will be, interesting to see if he's ready, because he's flashed more than maybe some of the others have at the college level.
All right. We're going to talk next about KZ and about Precious. But before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Again, you're supposed to be drinking one of these every time that Alex says at the end of the day he finally threw one in. So get your Biscayne Bay IPA or your Marlins Lager and drink to that, or drink to anything else, because you can find Biscayne Bay Brewing at virtually any of the supermarkets here in South Florida, but also at many restaurants. If you don't see it, then ask for it. This is the official beer of Inter Miami CF, also of the Miami Marlins, and of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, so we can keep bringing you all of this free content. They support the local community. Make sure you support them, because Biscayne Bay Brewing is the only independent brewery down here in South Florida. I know there was another one, not independent anymore. Make sure you're supporting Biscayne Bay Brewing. Okay, so again, BiscayneBayBrew.com, or again, go to your local supermarket and ask for it. All right, let's get to the two players I think that everybody's most curious about, because with Tyler Hero, we've saw the breakout. With Kendrick Nunn, we kind of saw what he can be at his best. Duncan Robinson is out of the development program at this point, and now he's considered the 75th best player in the NBA, not just by ESPN, but he got the exact same ranking from CBSSports.com, which actually ranked the other 4 Heat players that were in the ESPN rankings a little bit lower, all 4 of them, Bam, Butler, Dragic, and Hero. They had Robinson in the same place. So we're going to, again, Robinson to the side, Nunn to the side, Hero to the side. We talked about some of the fringe guys, but is it fair to say that Heat fans are most interested, Greg, in Precious and KZ? No doubt.
I think that KZ has a particular Heat Twitter following that is he's a cult favorite. We'll say that much for him. And I think that he just has a huge opportunity this year to plug a hole. So he's one of the guys, right? And then just when you, and this is like where the hope trafficking extraordinaire stuff really stands out, because all we really have to go off of is highlight videos. And when you see Precious play and you think about the fit next to Bam, and if you could potentially have any semblance of 2 Adebayo-like defenders and athletic presences, it's an interesting mix, and it's super intriguing. So those are the guys that I think they offer the greatest long-term high ceiling kind of stuff that Heat fans are looking for in prospects, but also because inevitably I think every Heat fan is kind of deep down inside embracing for they're bracing for a consolidation of players for some sort of superstar at some point. You're looking for a guy who's a cost-controlled young player who can step in when you've kind of depleted the back end of the roster to fulfill a trade and become a contributor. So that's the kind of the stuff you're looking for, and obviously the highlight reel stuff too. So it'll be those are the guys I'm most excited about seeing tomorrow night.
But the thing about that, guys, is I know what you said. You're looking for a cost-controlled asset who can step in. But also one of these cost-controlled assets could be the guy stepping out, right? So, I mean, they could trade Precious. They could trade KZ. I mean,
yeah,
I know they don't want to, but they could.
Imagine if KZ looks so good that you're able to spare, including Duncan Robinson. I'm just totally hypothetical, and that's probably a little extreme, but like those are the kind of things that maybe you string together a few good games and you raise your value.
Well, here's the other part of it, Alex. I'm watching the Portland preseason game the other night, and I'm seeing how good Derek Jones Jr. looks in that system, which seems like it was like made for. We liked that song. I think all of us liked that as a fit for him at the time. He's not really. You have two elite backcourt players who are going to handle, and so he doesn't have to handle. He just runs the floor, defends, and he's playing next to Covington. So I mean, they could be terrific as a pair defensively, and obviously Covington's a better 3-point shooter. But I'm watching DJJ, and what I'm thinking is they must really like Okpala, right? Because and I know we've said that, but it kind of emphasized the point, because I think we kind of forgot that DJJ is a pretty useful player in the right circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And he also was 22, and the Heat really didn't make any effort to re-sign him. And I know, again, part of it is, the second year and all that, but part of it is KZ Okpala, right? So what is it you're looking for from KZ? Because I think the other thing that Greg hit on is there's a certain mythology with KZ now that's developed that I don't know if he can live up to at this stage.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a little bit of a buildup after all this time. And, he obviously had a lot of time off from playing basketball because the Achilles injury that he had last year. And so I'm interested to see how he looks for sure. I think that I'm intrigued to see how he looks because he projects as a ball handling forward. And again, I'm not a college basketball expert by any means, but from what we've seen from KZ and Stanford, he projects to be a ball handling forward. He has good sizing length. He has pretty decent athleticism. He seems to be a high IQ player. He has a little bit of a shot. He has a post game too. So he can probably I want to see if he can kind of take advantage of mismatches. Obviously, I don't know if he's going to have that type of green light with Spo to just be like, oh yeah, KZ's got the mismatch freedom. But I'm interested to see him kind of showcase his skills after all this time off. I think he's kind of an interesting player, and I don't know that he'll be able to live up to expectations. But I'm still interested in KZ and the skill set.
Is there anything about preseason games you typically don't really worry about the opponent because, I mean, they're getting ready in their own way. But is there anything about New Orleans? And they're going to see them the first regular season game. Regular season is shortened a little bit. The Christmas Day game is obviously going to have a lot of interest because it's Zion. But is there anything about, and we get to see our old friend Stan Van Gundy again, but is there anything about New Orleans in particular that provides a test for some of these guys?
I don't think so. I think that's when we get a little too laser focused on the X's and O's from a matchup perspective. I just don't think that you're getting a good enough idea of all of the regulars in rotation and stuff like that. So, I mean, I want to see a couple nice highlights from different guys. I'm always interested to see rookies on other teams. Or second year guys, basically the young core guys. So there's some interest there and that kind of stuff, but I'm not reading too much into it. The biggest thing tomorrow for me, and I'm kind of circling back a minute just to plug this in, is that if you really keep the context that Miami had Tyler Hero somewhere in the neighborhood, and I don't remember the exact numbers. It was in maybe 9 on their board or somewhere like there. And KZ Okpala was 10. And had Hero not been there when they drafted, they would have potentially considered taking KZ Okpala up there in the lottery. Like if you really keep that in context, they have high hopes and they really believe in him. So there is definitely, I think some of the expectation comes from that kind of information has been put out there. Exactly. So it'll,
and the 4 second round picks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they were like flabbergasted and couldn't believe he was still available when they were able to trade up to get into that spot to get him. So he's the guy I think probably Heat fans the most.
Greg, this is the question with that, okay? Because I've heard a lot of the same information, okay? And if they had drafted him in the lottery, I mean, if you thought the reaction to Hero was one thing, like with Okpala, I mean, at least Hero played at Kentucky. If it was Okpala, I can't imagine. Like, because again, he was on most boards as a second round pick, and it would have been, at least from a fan perception, like the overreach of the century. But why? Why was KZ? Why did other teams not value KZ Okpala like the Heat do?
my understanding, and Alex probably has done enough YouTube deep dives and reading to also chime in here, but my understanding is it was injury concerns, and also that there were just some raw elements to his game that people didn't 100% know if he could polish to the point that he would be kind of what has been advertised, the ball handling, kind of do it all Swiss Army knife wing. So I think those are probably the biggest things. Maybe there was some shooting concerns, but from my perspective, it's always been the injury thing has been most prevalent.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how I had thought of it too. The injuries, the raw stuff. I mean, to me, the thing with KZ is, and I'm not going to like focus on this, like, because we haven't really seen a sample of him in the NBA yet, but I just we don't know what his NBA skills are. And I'm not saying that he won't be skilled or that he won't have these skills, quickly if he becomes a rotation player. Cause I do think he has an interesting skill set there. I don't think he's raw in the sense that like he doesn't know how to dribble very well. Or, he's got a little bit of everything, like Leif said. And so I'm interested to see what actually stands out from him, because I think that's kind of the question mark. Is it going to be his defense? Is it going to be, maybe some improved shot making, the ball handling stuff? I just want to see where he's at right now. And to me, the thing with KZ was like, it would have been crazy if the Heat would have drafted him. Like Heat fans it would have been a meltdown, because I don't think anybody knew who he was.
No, they had no idea. Like, at least with Tyler Hero, there was there was some idea. And because if you followed college basketball, you kind of knew about his journey to Kentucky. But like KZ Okpala, even though he played longer in college, he's out at Stanford. Out of sight, out of mind for most people here on the East Coast.
Yeah, and a lot of Heat fans, including me, wanted Sekou Doumbouya, a raw wing, and I think the Heat got that with their second round pick in KZ Okpala. Except I think KZ is more ahead of Sekou with the ball handling stuff. Like, I think that's kind of interesting. I don't think Sekou has looked particularly great yet so far in NBA. So I'm interested to see how KZ looks, man. I am.
All right. Check out all of our sponsors. Again, manscaped.com. Use the code 5RSN. Also, prizepicks.com. The code there is FIVE. Again, just use these codes, okay? In some cases, they help us, but they always help you to get discounts. And also, check out Biscayne Bay Brewing. Just one at the end of the day today, so you won't be drunk after this one. We will be back after the preseason game. Monday night, we will discuss what happened, where they go from here. We're also lining up a couple of big guests this week. And as I said, we're going to be incorporating more people from around the network, introducing you to some new voices. Although if you've been on our streams and followed our content on the web, you're probably familiar with some of them. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.